My father's father was a Vietnam veteran. He dodged bullets the same size as his son's teardrops on the day that he passed away. You would think that a hero can't be conquered by a plague as petty as cancer, can't be driven into darkness by a disease unseen, but yet he died, leaving behind a widowed mother and 4 children. Can you imagine? 6 months later, being draped in candy-caned PJs, awaiting the day that all children wait for. That's right, I'm talking about Christmas. Hoping for the jingle bells of an imaginative sleigh with a chunky man in red with a majestic bag full of joy, but instead, a man in authoritative navy blue arrives at your front door with a badge on his hip and somber eyes full of bad news. 10 years old. And I guarantee you a stocking full of coal would be so much better than forgetting it was Christmas and wishing it was Resurrection Day so that your mother could rise from the dead. The woman that you came into this earth through, the woman you were birthed through, was shot and killed on Christmas Eve because she said no. I often wonder in her last breath was her last thought about the survival of her children, but I guess we'll never know. All I know is my father was 10 years old. All alone. And you may predict with this predicament that my father wouldn't be shit, you'd think this orphan's only occupation would be paper chasing, make other kids ante up their warbucks while thugging with his posse on Broadway, wondering, will the sun ever come out tomorrow? But what you wouldn't understand is orphanage puts you in a class with elite visionaries. So history was able to George Washington carve my father's own future. Although raised Edgar Allan Poe, he now leads his staff like Moses. He was an orphan too. Simba was left all alone, but we all know because he waited, he became king. Aristotle, Andrew Jackson, Alexander Hamilton, Bach, Batman. You may have Malcolm X'd him out, but with the vision of Ray Charles, he walked blindly into the history books like Babe Ruth. It may have rained in the beginning, but he grabbed his umbrella Fitzgerald. He had Faith Hill, and he put that Billie Holiday behind him. You may not see much potential in the individual with no parents, but when life hands you lemons, you make apples. Ask Steve Jobs. See, when I turned 21, I called my father with all the intentions on thanking him for everything he had ever done for me. But somewhere between the first and second ring, I realized 2 things. 1, he was never taught to be a father as a son. Raised by your aunt, but more by himself, he learned that handouts are irrelevant. And if you can't get it on your own, then you don't need it. He grew up. Well, I can't even really say that my father grew up because after 10, he was a man. So let's just say he aged. He aged and bred into his seeds the same values that he taught himself. And with those aging years, he created wealth through dedication. Some call it being a workaholic. I look at it as putting your goals in your windshield so you never, ever have to look at that rear view. 2, I always thought that my father's lack of affection was because of my lack of accomplishments. But now I know that my father's lack of affection was because of his lack of affection. Because when I was 10, I went home to a mother and a father. 11, the same thing. I'm 32 years old now, and I can still go back home to Arkansas to my mommy and my daddy. So how can I not blame him for not knowing how to hug me? But what my father did show me is perseverance. And that less than ideal beginnings can make for storybook endings. Cool.